Hello, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Watching the Boxes, fantasy basketball podcast, hosted by #basketball.com, your home for the very best fantasy tools and analysis on the entire internet. Go check them. I don't know what you're doing. It's draft season. Go there right now. Go check them out. #basketball.com. I'm your host, Mike Catron. And joining me in video format from locations unknown, a mysterious gentleman known as Tyler P. Watts. What's up, Tyler?
Michael, somehow we're only 2 weeks away from the NBA season, and I don't know how it happened.
It doesn't make any sense to me. But this is the it's gonna come quick. This is the best time. This is the best time of the year. It's draft season, right? Like, this is it. This is what we wait for all summer.
Oh, for sure. And I feel like this year we have a lot of intrigue and a lot of craziness, and we'll see if the Celtics can finally become another dynasty, or if we have another new champion for the sixth year in a row.
Yeah, that's kind of crazy considering we spent like a decade under the LeBron Steph Curry finals. Like, it's great. I love the parody. I love the fact that I actually don't know who's going to win. Can Boston repeat? Sure. Can Jokic win another one? Sure. Could the Knicks win? Maybe. Kind of like the Knicks. As long as no one gets injured, sure. Yeah, they could. If someone gets injured, though, they might not make the playoffs.
Yeah, I mean, that's the problem of trading for stars in this apron era, if that's what you want to call it, is the depth goes away very quickly. And so the Knicks are banking on, their kind of top 5 or 6 being really, really good, and they are really, really good. And Boston kind of banked on the same thing last year, and it worked for the Celtics. The Knicks are clearly building in that same mold, and we'll see if it works for them.
Well, we haven't talked about the big trade. Karl-Anthony Towns going to the Knicks. Orange Julius Randle. OJ going to... I don't think he probably wants to be called OJ. Going to Minnesota, along with Dante DiVincenzo. Real quick, what's your take on this? I really like the trade for fantasy reasons, anyway. But what's your take on this, Tyler?
Well, I think for Towns, it allows him to shift more into playing center, which probably means more blocks, which maybe means more rebounds, and it definitely means more minutes because it's Thibodeau.
Yep. Yeah.
So you like that for fantasy, especially. And on the other side, like, I don't know, it was a strange one for me in that sense. It's like Randall's not really a great floor spacer and is kind of best with the ball in his hands, and they have Anthony Edwards, so that was kind of a strange one. But I mean, I get that they made it for mostly financial reasons, but I'm interested to see A, how healthy is Randall this year, and B, how does he play in Minnesota. I don't know that it really negatively impacted his stock for me. It just is more of a question mark than Towns, who I think is just better, honestly, in New York.
Yeah, I think he's great in New York. I love that he's playing center. We're going to see old cat numbers, in my opinion. I think this Jalen Brunson benefits greatly from having Cat as a pick and roll partner. Like, he's good. Cat's going to space the floor. I think everybody else on the team benefits greatly for Cat spacing the floor, because then Jalen Brunson can find them, right? So I'm bumping Jalen. I'm bumping most of the Knicks up, really. But I think Karl-Anthony Towns, he was like not a guaranteed second round player in my head. Now he absolutely is. Would you? I actually would think about taking him as high as the turn. Crazy?
I don't think that's crazy. I think it comes down a lot to kind of who you want in that range. And I mean, like, I'm certainly taking Towns over Anthony Edwards at this point.
Yep, 100%.
So it comes down to a lot of, like, what's your risk tolerance for guys like Kyrie and LaMelo Ball, and the older players like LeBron and KD and those guys, and Dame Lillard. Like, I don't think it's out of the question to pick Towns kind of early in that second round, depending on kind of what you want to do and how you want to build your team. But I would think for me, he's probably more like mid to late second round at this point.
Yeah, and all the mock drafts I've done since the trade, I think about taking him on the turn, and then I don't. So that's probably saying something, right? On the Minnesota side, though, like you're saying, I think a lot of people I've been reading, a lot of other fancy analysts out there, they're like, "Oh, Julius Randle now is actually attractive," and I'm like, "Really? He is?" According to what? Like, he's not gonna get the usage Cat did in Minnesota. Like, I kind of don't get that logic, right? Like, I don't think he plays the minutes that Cat does there, and I actually think the person it benefits, well, other than Anthony Edwards, not enough to bump him into a first round player or a turn player or ahead of Cat. Like, Anthony Edwards is going to be great. He's going to get more usage now. That's cool. He's still probably into the second round, early third round player for me. Julius Randle played in New York 35.4 minutes a game. I don't think Julius Randle plays 30 minutes in Minnesota. I think Naz Reid is the guy who actually gets a nice little bump from this trade.
Yeah, I could see that, and I think that that's factual. That there's gonna be nights where Randall doesn't really close the game, just because they want Naz Reid's ability to shoot, or Dante DiVincenzo's ability to shoot, and kind of go smaller with Rudy at the 5, or maybe even go with Naz Reid at the 5, and kind of go with a real 5-out lineup, depending on the matchup. So, yeah, I think Chris Finch is gonna play with stuff. This is another one of those trades like Chris Paul to the Warriors last year, where it's like, how much of it was Minnesota really wanting Julius Randle, and how much of it was this was more financially motivated to get off a big contract that you didn't want anymore, and Randle's there for a year, but like he's not prioritized in maybe the way he was in New York. And I don't know that we know the answer to that question fully yet, but I can definitely see how this could be a little bit of a ding to Randle's value, but like, again, Randall's still like a multiple-time All-Star, right? Like, This guy's been a 3-time All-Star. Like, he's gonna be good.
And, well, I think we know the answer to that question. It's about money. But also in the past, I feel like Randall's been underrated. Now I feel like he's overrated. But, like, he's one of the very few players you can get later in drafts, even past the top 100, who scores 20 points a game, who gets very good rebounds, really solid assists, okay percentages. His threes aren't great. Steals, blocks ain't great. That's not what you're not going to expect to get a all-around player at that stage anyway, right? But like 20 points a game past 100, I think that's absolute money of a pick to set for. And let me see what we got going on here. Oh my God, Yahoo's really I'm a little tired of all the sites, really, but I'm going to look up the ADP. Let me pull it up. Let me pull it up for our viewers on YouTube. That's right, we have pivoted to video. We are doing live streams, as always, on twitch.tv/watchingtheboxes. We now have a YouTube channel where we will be putting up the podcast, other videos with other analysts, all sorts of stuff on our YouTube channel, Watching the Boxes. And then, of course, if you're watching on those things, subscribe to the podcast, Watching the Boxes, Fantasy Basketball Podcast, wherever podcasts are sold. Look at me. Look at it. Look at that. Look at that transition into the website, yahoo.whatever.com. Randall, where is he? Julius Randle's ADP. Can you guess, Tyler?
Well, I'm looking at it, so I don't think I need to guess.
All right, 65. That's stupid.
I mean, I could have played it off, I guess.
I know, but we need to work on our fake banter. I don't know what Julius Randle is. Maybe 113? No, 65. Got you again, Tyler. What are we doing here? What's going? Like, I get Julius Randle. He's okay. First off, he's not a top 65 player in general.
But let me counter with this. there are some guys ahead of him, then I'd honestly rather have Julius Randle then.
Okay.
I'm looking at you, DeAndre Ayton.
Yeah. You know what? I don't mind DeAndre. You know what? I'd rather have DeAndre Ayton. We don't disagree on a whole lot, but I like DeAndre Ayton. I don't think his job is at risk in Portland. I don't. DeAndre Ayton's good.
Yeah, okay. So his job maybe isn't at risk in the sense that they're going to start him at the beginning of the season. But, like, if Portland is tanking, which Portland is the worst team in the Western Conference potentially, at the All-Star break, aren't they just going to be like, all right, we're going to play the young guy because we want to lose these games anyways to try to get the number one pick or give ourselves the best shot at the number one pick?
Okay. That's a very fair
So,
statement.
and like, if it's Roto, okay, maybe you want Ayton, but, like, I don't really see a scenario where Ayton plays more than 60 games.
Okay. Interesting. I will take the over on 60 games for DeAndre Ayton.
All right,
Put it on the board.
Put that one on the board.
Put it on the board. We haven't got too many board bets out there. We will share all our board bets and our Who Do I drafts and our my favorite podcast of the year, bold predictions that we do right before the season starts every single year, which is my favorite podcast that we do. Though I did really like, and we got some nice feedback on the Jaylen Brown line podcast. People seem to really enjoy that because it makes sense, right? He is either the best worst player or the worst best player. And that's the line. If you're better than Jaylen Brown, you're a top tier player. And if you're not better than Jaylen Brown, you're in that first plateau region. Makes perfect sense to me.
Yeah, and I mean it's weird that he keeps being the player. I think that's the weirdest part about it.
It's been years. He just continues to be that player. Which is like we're talking about Julius Randle in that first plateau region. I want a guy who's going to get more usage. Like if I'm in that first plateau region, I want a guy who could be a top 50 player, who's living, like, if everything goes right, he could be a top 50 player. Julius Randle cannot. If everything goes right with DeAndre Ayton, he could be a top 50 player. Is that likely? No. But it can happen.
Well, let's just say that's always about Randle, right? And I think this is a thing we don't talk about, maybe enough sometimes. It's like, Randle is very much a better in real life player than he is in fantasy because he gets you almost no defensive stats. Like, he hasn't gotten you one stock, one steal and block combined since 2022. So in the last 2 years, he's averaged less than one steal and block combined. Like, and that's just not offering you anything. And then when you add in that he is a subpar three-point shooter too, like, those are three categories that are setting you back instantly.
Ooh, he's like the Tony Snell of Zach Randolph's.
I don't think anyone followed that in the sense that Tony Snell might still be playing in the G League, but Zach Randolph hasn't played in like 6 years.
That cannot be true. I don't think Tony Snell, if you're out there, or if anyone has eyes, ears on Tony Snell's whereabouts, please hit us up on Twitter.
He plays for the Sioux Falls Skyforks in the NBA G League. This is not a joke.
All right. Shout out to Tony Snell. Keep getting them checks. Like former Chicago Bull Tony Snell. All the former Bulls doing great things, except for Tony Snell, kind of. Back to the plateau region and Julius Randle. I'm with you that, like, Julius Randle isn't terrible. But what I'm targeting in this plateau region from like 45 to 75 is someone with top 50 potential, someone with who's either young, getting better, or has a potential for greater usage this season. And I'm putting them at the top of my plateau, and then that's what I'm trying to draft. And then probably that sneaks in there is like someone who you can guarantee that their role is the same. So if they were the 61st best player last year, they're going to probably be the 61st best player this year. They're just kind of a solid starter. Julius Randle checks none of those things off.
Oh, that's fair. And like I said, like I'm not in love with Julius Randle. I guess my point was just like I think Yahoo's rankings on Randle. It's not just Randle where Yahoo's rankings are not good.
That's fair. Um, all right, it's gonna be a good draft. I think the the mock drafts that we have coming up, you're gonna see our tiers and plateaus reflected properly. Um, I'm feeling pretty comfortable about my draft, kind of like how I feel about my categories draft, because I just did a points draft, Tyler, and you know I hate points leagues, but that's up on the YouTube. If you're in a points league, go check it out on YouTube. Points drafts for me, everybody after like pick 15 to like pick 70 is in a plateau, and then from 70 to like 100 200, that's the second plateau. It's kind of, it's pointless.
Fair,
Yeah,
fair.
I fucking hate it. I don't like points leagues, so that's like the only points content you're gonna get out of this. But what I want to do today is talk about, like, go through, because I feel comfortable about my how I feel about my drafts right now. Go round around and talk about what I think is the most interesting or most confusing. Doesn't mean they're like the best or the worst, or they have the best upside or whatever. The most confusing player in each round based on a 12 team league, based on Yahoo ADPs, and then ask Tyler what he thinks about that person, because Tyler knows more than me, and then I'm going to be more knowledgeable about the guys I know least about.
Okay, fair. So this is the Mike knows least about, but is going to learn the most about players.
That's the name of the segment. Unfortunately, the well, you know what? I'm not going to do Anthony Edwards. We talked about Anthony Edwards. He's not a first round player. Uh, I'm gonna throw that one out. My first round most, I guess, interesting player according to Yahoo ADPs, which everybody's seeing on the screen right now, to me would be Jason Tatum. I don't know. Like, everyone's got him in the first round. He's not a top 12 talent. He is, like, what, 26 years old? He's coming into his prime, for God's sakes. He's very consistent. So, totals, he'll be ranked very well. He'll do a very great job. But he feels like the last person I want to build a team around. And he also feels like the first person that slips out of my first round into my second round. Like, I'd rather have Trae Young. I'd rather have Steph Curry, I think. And maybe if you want to talk about Steph Curry, maybe he's the second most interesting player in the first round. But Tatum to me is the one I go, why would I draft Jason Tatum in the first round?
Okay, I'll offer you a counterpoint. Start this.
Okay.
Such that you're on the turn and you want potentially a top 5 player, but you're on the turn, so it's gonna have to come with some amount of risk, right? Be that injury risk, be that, like variation in shooting or whatever the case may be, variation in role. Don't you want someone like Tatum to pair that person with? In the sense that you know exactly what you're going to get from Tatum. You're going to get 8 rebounds. You're going to get 4.5 to 5 assists. You're going to get 27 points. You're going to get a steal. You're going to get .6 blocks. You're going to get 3 3-pointers. You're going to get some fairly good percentages.
Okay.
Like, Jason Tatum is the metronome, right? Like, he's always the same.
It's still a reach, in my opinion, right? If you're taking him ninth overall, you want him...
But
you want to get him back around in the second round. But I kind of get what you're saying here is that if you take him at 9, you got him at 9. So you want him in the second round. Sure. But you have him guaranteed in the first round. And then when you come back around in the second round, chances are someone who's a little bit risky, like Kevin Durant or James Harden, is sitting there that you could then pair with him and go, hey, I didn't just blow the top of my draft because Jason Tatum's going to be there night in and night out doing his Jason Tatum thing.
yeah, and you can shoot your shot with somebody. right?
Yeah,
Whoever you think is going to be great.
Kevin Durant.
Whereas,
Kevin
like,
Durant.
if you go Curry, and then
Steph
you
Curry.
go Kevin Durant, like, yeah, you might win the league. You also might be dead last because they both played 45 games.
Sure. I like that. Instead of going risk, or because like I like the idea on the turn, Trey Young and Steph. Like that's fun, lots of points. Now you're set up for basically going any direction, even with Trey Young's field goal percentage. You got crazy assists. It's guard is fun. There's also a lot of guards later in the draft too. Um, you go Tatum, Steph, or shit, go Trey and Tatum. Actually be solid with your draft, or go Tatum and Durant. Durant's a top 9, 8 player if he's healthy. He's playing well. Like he's fantastic. So okay, that's a pretty good. I think that's a pretty good reason to take Jason Tatum in the first round. Let's jump to the second round. I'm going to talk about somebody I don't feel like I've heard a lot of people talk about. Sitting here, right, actually near the end of the second round, because we just talked about. Like, I think James Harden's a second round player, certainly with Kawhi out. I think Karl Anthony Towns is a second round player, even though he's pegged in the third round right now. Yahoo ADP. I don't think I've heard anyone really talk about Dame Lillard very much. What's going on? What's Dame up to? What's he doing?
Um, so Dame falls into a lot of buckets, so to speak, like a lot of like stereotypes, right? He's the older point guard, right? He's 34 now. Um, he also is coming off a year where he dealt with a lot personally, right? He had the change to Milwaukee, so he was on a new team for the first time in his career. He was going through a divorce and all that stuff. He was also, like, again, he played 73 games, which was great. That was the most games he had played since 2019. There were some not expected Damian Lillard moments, but when you look at it in totality, like the numbers were still really, really good.
They're really
And
good.
you got to feel like that pairing with Giannis is going to be better in year two, just more familiarity, all that stuff. They're actually a deeper team now, which is good. They were running out some not NBA players, and you want to know how they know they weren't NBA players anymore? Is they still aren't signed.
Yeah,
Like look
they've
back at their
disappeared.
roster from last year. There's 3 or 4 guys that were getting regular minutes that are no longer in the NBA, and they've filled those roles with Gary Trent and some like real NBA players. And so I think Dame's going to be better. He's going to shoot better. He's going to probably get you a few more assists, probably get you a few more points. And I don't really know why Dame is going at the end of the second round, because for me, I'd rather have Dame than some of these other guys, like Jalen Brunson, like Scotty Barnes, even like maybe even over Anthony Edwards. I'd rather have Dame.
I would rather have Dame than Anthony Edwards, 100%. Like still,
Yeah,
even with the bump in usage for Anthony Edwards, and I think that's why I'm a little question marked. Is that he's going like at the end of the second round? I've seen him go in the third round, middle of the third round. It's Dame, like he's still doing the Dame thing. He maybe doesn't play 35 minutes a game this season. Maybe plays 34, but like he's still gonna get crazy points, get your threes, get you the assists. He's a top 20 player, not going in the top 20.
Yeah, I don't really get that, other than like I said, he's old and he's coming off what most people would consider a down year that was not really that bad.
Yeah, a down year for him because he's a top like 6, 7 player. Yeah, it's a down year if you're in like 18, 19. You're still a top 20 player. Let's go to the third round. Looking at the third round, I feel like I might be missing something.
I feel
Oh,
like this is the round where it gets juicy for me,
this is
because
where it
there's
gets
some
fun.
guys where I'm like, no way, and there's some other guys where I'm like, how are you in the third round?
Yeah, I think we're kind of like on the same page when it comes to being like Fred Van Fleet, probably almost a second round player, should be in the third round. He's not. So I'm not going to talk about him. Um, we like the Jalen's. I think they're both outside of the third round. What am I missing about Alfred Sengun? Everyone is on Alfred Sengun. Everyone. He is currently ADP'd
So
at 28, 20, 29. Let's just say 29. I know he had a great final 2 months. It wasn't a top 30 final 2 months, but it was a great final 2 months. He's super young. Houston's kind of fun. What? Where's. This is an incredible leap for him if he's a top 30 player. Is it possible? Am I missing something?
I mean, it's possible in the sense that he often gets compared to Nikola Jokic, right? So like, if he's him, then obviously he's great. This one doesn't make any sense to me though, because the Rockets are an incredibly deep team, and at some point they've got to pick what young guys they want, right? Like they have 7 pretty young players plus Fred VanVleet and Dylan Brooks that all want fairly big minutes. And I mean, I don't know if you know this, Mike, but like 9 guys, you can't play 9 guys 30 minutes. Like the math just doesn't work out. They also have Steven Adams, who I can't imagine they're going to play Sengun and Steven Adams any minutes.
No.
And I can't imagine Steven Adams is going to like accept the 10-minute bench roll.
Yeah.
So how many minutes even are there for Sengun? Like I would assume it's like 30 and 18 split between those two.
Do you really think he's like gonna pop up? Like they're gonna put him at the 4 and Steven Adams at the 5? I'm sure they'll try it, but like they'll try it for like 2 games.
And so I just don't know. Like I don't really see how Sengun is in this round. Like he would need to be. He would need to get blocks, like more than a block a game. He got 0.9 his first 2 years. Can he get that up to like 1.2, 1.3? I don't see that, but I guess that's a pathway, right? The pathway is also getting like 7 assists, but Fred VanVleet is still there. Amen Thompson coming out of the draft was a point guard. Reed Shepherd had the ball in his hands a good bit at Kentucky.
Reed
if
Shepherd's
he's gonna play, like
gonna play, yeah.
Yeah, so like I don't really get it. And then this is another guy where like the 3-point shot is not there. Like he averaged half of one per game last year at 30%. Like I don't see him just like all of a sudden developing this 3-point shot where he hits 3 threes a game. So that's going to be a negative category. And I guess the leap some are expecting is like up to 25 points, but with the depth on that team, I just don't see the opportunities there for that to happen. And so Sengun is not in my 3rd round and not a recommended pick from me.
I completely agree. I think Houston, like you're saying, they just got too many mouths to feed. And the only person I know guarantee will eat is Fred VanVleet. Because Fred VanVleet does not need shots to eat. Like, he is going to distribute the ball. He's going to be the number 1 ball handler. He's going to be the number 1 distributor. So that does not mean point Sengun. That does not mean that Alperen Sengun, who in January last season averaged almost 17 shots a game, in March he averaged almost 20 shots a game. And I think people go out there and they look at that and they go, damn, in the last 3 months he was averaging like over 20 a game, almost 10 rebounds a game, 5 assists, oh my god, steal and a half, almost a block. And it's like, those are great. Like, by the way, that's crazy that he was averaging that. That's really, really cool. Great upside, great hype, 22 years old. If hashtag basketball has got him, I think this would be a great season. 19.5 points, 10 rebounds, 5.5 assists, 1.2 steals, 0.8 blocks. That's the 40 with his percentages. No 3-pointers basically. They got him at almost a half a 3-pointer. Good luck. In his turnovers, he's the 42nd ranked player.
Yeah, and if anything, now I obviously new coach last year, but like the 1.2 steals were the outlier. Like he had 0.8 and 0.9 his first 2 years. So like is that number going to go back to 0.8? Like if that goes back to 0.8, that's 0.4 less steals. That's a lot.
That's a huge drop. Now, if you like don't care about free throw, which a lot of people who play head to head don't, Sengun is a top 20 player with those projected stats, right? So I feel like, but honestly, with what you're saying, with the usage there, the amount of people who need to eat, the potential of actually not playing as many minutes because of Adams. Those projections, in my opinion, are best case scenario. Not better. It doesn't get better than that.
Yeah, and again, like that's not in the third round. Like if you want to take him in the fourth round, okay.
Go for it.
But like I just don't see a way where he's, returning, pick 27, pick 28, pick 29, which is where he's going.
Yeah. If you're ignoring free throws, okay, it's the middle of the end of the third round and you want them, take them. Fine. That's great. I just feel like, I don't know, isn't Rudy Gobert pretty good too if you're ignoring free throws? Like there's a ton of really good players still out on the board. I just feel like the opportunity cost there is pretty poor if you're reaching for Sengun, and a lot of people are.
And here's the other thing about people ignoring free throws. If you pick him as one of your centers in an ignoring free throw strategy, like he doesn't offer the blocks.
Yeah. So now
he's
you're ignoring blocks.
Right, he's kind of hurting you in a strategy that I would assume you're leaning into.
Yeah, exactly. I just think, well, we talked about it. Let's go to round 4. I agree, he's being overdrafted. Round 4's got a lot of guys in it, and I want to make sure we get to them. But I want to focus on this dilemma here. Kawhi Leonard, ADP 40. Jimmy Butler, ADP 48. In a Tyler P. Watts only draft, you're sitting at pick 48, and there's Jimmy Butler, and there's Kawhi Leonard. Who are you taking?
Oh, this is not even a question. So did you catch Kawhi's media day comments?
No, I did not.
Okay, well, I'm pretty sure you can find it on YouTube somewhere. I want everyone to go back and listen to it, and you make your own determinations on what he said and his body language and all that. That's fine. What it sounded like to me, personally, and this is just a personal thought, and I will preface this by saying, the Clippers are never going to really tell you the truth about Kawhi, and especially with his injuries.
No, because they're opening up a new stadium.
Yeah, they haven't since the moment he arrived. Everything that he said sounded like to me, hey, this is a problem I'm going to keep having to deal with, and at any moment, it could knock me out for an undetermined amount of time.
Oh, really?
That's not a person I want on.
Oh, really?
On my fantasy team, especially in the fourth round, when it sounds to me like Kawhi might play 15 games.
I hate that. I hate that.
Yeah, and I think you're just going to be kicking yourself if you draft Kawhi, and then, it turns out that, yeah, he plays a few, and then he's out a few because his knee swelled up again, and he keeps saying, I think I've found the way to treat it, to manage it, but it's you
play
said
a
you
couple
were
times
fine.
a month.
Well, and you said you were fine for USA basketball, and then you were all of a sudden sent home, and there's just all these red flags that are building, let's say, right? And I don't know. They haven't told us. I'm no expert on Kawhi's knee. I don't really know anything. All I'm saying is it's too much risk for me.
That's fair. And I think we rarely, we never say, don't draft this player. And, I actually think Kawhi is so good. Eventually you draft him. Same with LaMelo Ball. You eventually draft him. I will never draft either one of them. Because they are a do not draft. Probably for the top 100.
Yeah, I mean, at some point, it gets to be a real dilemma with both players because they're both exceptionally talented and they're both going to put up great stats when they do play. At least LaMelo, you can convince yourself, well, maybe he's healthy. Kawhi is telling you that this is an ongoing problem.
Yes. He's like, this will be a problem. It will continue to be a problem. Enjoy. And I don't want to enjoy that at all. Pivot to Jimmy Butler. How early are you willing to take Jimmy Butler in a draft?
A lot earlier than you'd think.
No, I don't think so, actually. I don't think it's a lot earlier than I think. A lot earlier than maybe some of our listeners think, though.
Yeah, so like I mean, it's a contract year for Jimmy. We all know he wants to get paid one more time. We all know how good he is when he wants to be good. I think it's going to be a big year for Jimmy.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're not going to get 82 games, like you're just not. It's Jimmy Butler. You're not going to get that.
Jimmy,
But
Jimmy.
at the same time, like, give me him over a lot of these young players, the Evan Mobleys, the Desmond Banes, the Jalen Williams, the Cade Cunningham. Like, Jimmy Butler's good, man. He's really good.
Yeah.
And in that third round, I'm taking a hard look at Jimmy often and going like, man, I think I might just take Jimmy here and ride with it.
We've been talking about Jimmy's contract year for quite a few podcasts now. And all I need to know about the finals, the bubble finals MVP, Jimmy Butler, all I need to know about Jimmy G. Buckets is that he showed up on media day and he wasn't fucking around. He didn't have a silly wig on. He didn't have emo hair. He wasn't doing a country thing. He showed up and he's like, I ain't fucking around. The league should be worried about it. Honestly, the league should be worried about that.
Yeah. I mean, we know that he is one of the best players in the league, like talent-wise. So the question is he going to play? It seems like he's going to. It seems like he wants to get a lot of money.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's scary. That's scary for the rest of the league.
I am banking on. I'm picking Jimmy Butler in the third round on most of my drafts, and in drafts where I'm like, I think I can get him in the fourth. I almost always get him in the fourth round. It's easy.
Yeah, that's the nice thing is he's going at the end of the fourth. So like if you have a pick early in the fourth, you can probably snag him and not even have to go in the third round.
It's like one of those things where it's like, you know how the market shifts. It's like, oh, okay. Yeah, Jimmy Butler's old. And then, like, analysts like us come in and go, yeah, Jimmy Butler's old, but, like, he's actually, like, really good. And then the market kind of shifts. It's like, yeah, you know, right, he is actually pretty good and pretty consistent on being good even when he is injured. That hasn't happened. And it's really weird because, like, we're not the only people saying, hey, Jimmy Butler's good. Like, it just hasn't shifted. And I'm like, that's great for me because I'm going to get Jimmy Butler.
I think it has a lot to do with the amount of exciting young talent in the league.
Sure. Well, this guy's not that young.
People want to get hyped about.
Because I want to talk about somebody in the fourth round that I legitimately don't think I've heard any person talk about. Like, I'm sure they have, right? You could send me your hate mail at Watch the Boxes. I'm sure someone's talked about him, but like, I don't think I've seen anyone spend more than like 30 seconds talking about Desmond Bane. Like, Desmond Bane was like an up and coming, like two seasons ago. We were like, yo, Desmond Bane's gonna be great, and then Desmond Bane was like really, really good, almost great, and everybody was like, who cares?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just that Memphis team had such a bad year last year, and they set a bunch of records for playing the most people, and nobody really noticed that Desmond Bane, got better. And obviously, Ja's going to come back to, take off some of those assists maybe and some of that usage. Maybe. But, like, would it surprise me if Desmond Bane was a top 36 player, like a third-round player? It wouldn't at all. No. Like, Desmond Bane's really good.
Desmond Bane's a third-round player. If you're in a 9-cat league, he's a third-round player. If you're in a roto league, he's a third-round player. Like, maybe even close to a second-round player if you care about every single... Nah, probably not. There's a lot of good players. But if you took him on the turn, like at the top of the third, like the first pick in the third round in a roto league, okay, I'm with you. I'm absolutely with you. Because, one, Ja Morant already rolled his ankle. Like, Ja Morant's health will be a big fat question mark this season, I think. So off and on, Desmond Bane will be asked to do the things he did last year, but for a team that's actually trying to make the playoffs. Not whatever. I mean, honestly, I don't know if they will, but like, they're actually going to be trying this season. Desmond Bane's probably their second best player, right? Like, is he better than Jaren Jackson? Debatable, quite frankly. And he just doesn't do anything. Like, he just doesn't do anything like poorly. He is good across the board. Plus, he's a 20-point scorer with 3 3-pointers. And I say this all the time. You should give a shit about your percentages. In a head-to-head league, especially in a roto league, but in a head-to-head league, you should give a shit about your percentages. Seriously. Those are 2 categories. You can win them because a lot of people don't give a shit about those 2 categories at all. Desmond Bane is fantastic. Like, because he's like really good and sort of great in across the board, Desmond Bane's probably never going to be a top 25 player. He's never going to be a second round player. But he's the Jason Tatum of the third round.
That's fair.
Yeah. I don't know why no one's talking about him, Tyler. It's actually starting to piss me off. I keep waiting for somebody to be like, hey, by the way, Desmond Bane is really, really good, and his ADP is 44.
Yeah, but again, he's surrounded by attractive names that everyone wants to be better. Jalen Johnson, Jalen Williams, all those guys. And then a lot of players that we've seen be really good for a really long time, right? The Rudy Goberts, the Miles Turners, the, Kawhi Leonards, all those players. So, I can kind of understand why he doesn't get talked about a lot, because you either A, want to talk about the sexy players, or B, you want to talk about the older players that are being undervalued, and so that leaves little to no room for Bane, who just, I don't think anyone watched the Grizzlies game last year because Ja only played 9 times, and they were kind of out of it from the get-go.
Yeah. I get it, and actually that's always a good gauge. Out of sight, out of mind. A lot of people don't pay attention to the Orlando Magic. So no one paid attention to the Grizzlies, and now Desmond Bane's out of sight, out of mind. Well, that's a big benefit for you because he's going 44th overall, and he's definitely a third-round player. I want to venture into the later rounds. I don't want to take too much of your time, Tyler. Do you have time for a few more?
Yeah, why not? Let's do it.
All right, because there's still a couple guys down here in this space. There's actually a lot of guys in this space that I'm like, I don't know, but let's do a little bit of a lightning round. After pick 48, well, I know how you feel about Zion Williams. We're not going to talk about Williamson. We're not going to talk about Zion. Lightning round. Vujovic is going at 54. I don't hate him, actually. I don't hate Vujovic. I think he's getting too much hate. I know the Bulls are a mess, but if he's playing normal minutes, which why wouldn't they? Because he's their best center. Even if their team's a mess, he's a top 50 player. He's going outside the top 50.
Yeah, that one's just tough because, again, this is another one of those tank scenarios where at some point does he just not play anymore? The Bulls are kind of anti that, so you feel somewhat better about him than some other guys, but they're also just not good this year. So do they do it because they're losing? There's potential there for that. I like Vucevic though. I think he is what he is. We know what he is. I mean, He's a veteran. We know what he's gonna do.
Well, I see his ADP at 54 here, and in leagues with mocks that I've done with other analysts or people who listen to the podcast or other podcasts, he's not going in the 5th round. He's going the 6th round. He's going way later than 54, and I'm kind of he's not that bad. He's a top 50, almost a top 50 player, if not a top 50 player across the board, right? I understand if you're in a head-to-head league and you're doing a certain build, he doesn't get you the blocks for a center. His assists are fine, but his rebounds are double-digit rebounds, close to 20 points a game, hits threes from a center spot, and gets great free throw percentage. Because you should give a shit about your free throw percentage. And so since I do, I love taking him after pick 60 if he's available. I love taking him. What am I missing about Jalen Duren being also ADP 54? I'm never gonna take him there, ever. So what are other people doing?
Yeah, this is another one that doesn't make a lot of sense to me. I would much rather have Vucevic. Jalen Duren has never gotten more than 0.9 blocks or 0.7 steals in a game. He played 29 minutes last year. I get that, it was Monty Williams and people think it's going to be so much better with the new coach and all that stuff. But, no threes, no steals, A block if you're lucky. Okay, great. Like he's not going to score 20 points a game, so what else are you buying? Like you're buying some good rebounds and some decent assists from a center. Like
Yeah.
okay, but it doesn't make any sense to me why he's going here.
He
I
is
don't get
like
it.
the quintessential like later round I need a center guy, except for like those guys usually get blocks. And
What's crazy about this like whole run on centers? Duran, Claxton, Aiton. Like I don't really want any of those guys here.
round 6 is the center run round. And like I'd maybe take Aiton there, but like you're saying, Claxton, Aiden, Duran, that whole run there that I found that like I don't know Zubac and Podol and Valanciunas, they're available 3 rounds later, and they're like basically 90% of what those guys do.
Well, and not only that, the opportunity cost of like getting something better here and then getting what you're going to get there, like you're
Yeah,
getting a so much better player now that 90% is actually like if you're picking a different position like a point guard, you're getting 60% of the point
yeah,
guard you would have picked or 60%
not
of the
even.
wing you would have picked.
You're getting 5 assists instead of 8. Like you're getting way less. And that's actually kind of why I brought Vujovic up before Duran. Is that like I'm looking at their stats and I'm like Vujovic is better. He's going to get you assists. He's going to get you steals. He's going to hit threes. Duran isn't, but Duran's being drafted earlier. So, and I've seen discrepancies. I've seen him actually go earlier than 54, and I've seen him go in that run of like Claxton, Aiton. I'd say Vujovic, hilariously, is the only one I would take in the 6th round. Maybe Aiton, like I said. But then everybody gets a little tight when they see those centers go off the board, and then all of a sudden you see Brook Lopez go off the board, and Isaiah Hartenstein go off the board, and Nurkic go off the board, and you're like, ooh, have fun in the 6th round taking Nurkic.
Yeah, I just don't get that run either in the sense that like give me, Derek Lively or Zach Eady, like somebody like 50 picks later, 40 picks later that is going to get me some blocks and get me some rebounds and like just do some little things like I just don't get that whole run there of like I'm going to reach up for Brook Lopez because I need a center. I feel like there's even in the last like couple rounds there's some decent centers if you know where to look.
Yeah, like take a chance on. Do the Pelicans have a center yet?
Daniel Tice, if you're interested in that.
Not really. Speaking of the Pelicans, and I'll let you sound off on any players after this guy. Brandon Ingram is going 66th overall. Um, I think like the hate on Brandon Ingram might be a little too high in my opinion. People kind of are really out on him, and I don't know. Like 66 is decent. I've seen him go like closer to like 72, 75 in
Well,
drafts I've
they're
been
they're
in.
out on they're just out on the uncertainty. I think you know what I mean. Like, does he get traded? Do at some point they stop prioritizing him, which they're not going to do because he's really really good and they don't have that kind of depth. Uh, it'll be interesting to see what they do. I mean, obviously they're going to try to play Zion at the 5 quite a bit. Is that experiment going to work? I'm not really sure. Zion's not really a 5. Um, But yeah, I think that's just a weird spot where like there's a lot of uncertainty, and obviously they brought in Dejounte Murray. He's going to do some ball handling duties, so which probably means a little bit less for Ingram. I'm with you though. Like 65 feels right. It feels where he should be,
Yeah,
and I guess the uncertainty is what's knocking him down a little bit in some people's minds. It's like, okay, well, 65 feels right, but I'm just like a little uncertain with him, so I'll let him slip to 70 or 75.
yeah. Like 65 feels like at value, or maybe like yeah, I'd take him at 65. That's fine. And like usually that means you're getting either a player who's consistent or someone who has a little bit of an upside. He's 27. Like he's good. He's a 20-point scorer that you can get possibly after pick 70. Certainly rather have him than Julius Randle. I think I'm hating on Julius Randle this year.
That's your guy. All right, whatever works for you.
Yeah, I'm hating on him. Um, Last question, Tyler. Who are Tyler P. Watts's? Follow him on Twitter. Who are your favorite last round picks?
Oh, last round
Yeah.
picks.
Scrub all the way out.
That's a good question. I feel like we're gonna see a lot of fluctuation in this last round, just as some people like kind of vault up and vault down. But I'll go after like 130 ADP just because I feel like that's a pretty fair barometer of like kind of going in the last round. So guys, I like. I still can't quit Jaden Ivey. I think at some point he's gonna be good, and so I'll give him a shot in the last round. And if it's not working in the first couple weeks, like that's an easy cut, I think. LaMelo Ball going here is crazy. Like I don't know what to think about that.
A fantastic last round pick in my opinion, because you should be able, like with your last round pick, you should fully be aware that you're dropping this guy 80% of the time because there's a 20% chance they're fantastic. And like Lonzo Ball kind of like lives in that space.
When you put it like that, like I guess that makes sense. I don't know, just the whole like brand new knee seems scary.
They're
Henderson
modern medical marvels these days. Brand new knees, brand new everything.
Scoot Henderson is here. Dennis Schroeder's here. Those are two other point guards that I like. If you're going that route, I don't hate PJ Washington if you need kind of like a forward type.
Okay.
Other guys that I will venture say that might be good. Andrew Nebhard, like he was really good in the playoffs last year, and it's just going to be interesting to see like what he can offer. I don't hate guys like Lou Dort and KCP if you need that kind of 3-and-D type steals and some threes type guy. And then obviously you got some young guys that are interesting. Reed Shepherd, Ricochet. You got to feel like he's going to play a lot of minutes, being the number one pick. Even Steph Castle for the Spurs, I feel like some good things from him. And does he kind of just take over there with them obviously focusing on young talent? Like those are all some very interesting names going outside the top 130. And I'm sure there's others that I didn't touch on.
Oh, I love that. I love the idea that Castle could be taking over. It might take a while, right? And that's what I'm saying. Like you're probably going to drop these guys, but like I'd hold on to Castle for 3 months just to see if Pop does the damn thing with them. D'Anthony Melton, if he wins starters minutes, which I don't think any of those guys are going to win starters minutes, I'm very interested in D'Anthony Melton, a permanent, like everybody loves D'Anthony Melton every single year, and then he doesn't play. So chances are that's exactly what's going to happen here. But it's the last pick in the draft. Who gives a shit? The other last pick sneaky last pick that I think you could do in head-to-head league, not roto leagues, but head-to-head leagues, and absolutely positively do this in points leagues. Andre Drummond. You are going to win. If Embiid sits out at all, you are going to win that week with Andre Drummond. 100%. If he plays 20 minutes, you're going to win that week. If they're doing load management on Embiid for the first 3 months, you're going to win your rebounds with Andre Drummond. And you're certainly going to win points leagues with Andre Drummond. The guy is a psychopath. Permanent value. I love Andre Drummond. Shout out to the former Bull, Andre Drummond. All right. I think that's it. Thank you, Tyler. And thanks, everybody, for listening or watching. If you're listening on the podcast, find us twitch.tv/watchingtheboxes or on YouTube. Just look up on YouTube, Watching the Boxes. If you're watching this on YouTube, go follow the podcast at Watching the Boxes. You can find me on Twitter at Watch the Boxes. You can find Tyler at Tyler P. Watts. You should be following Tyler by now anyway, because he is one of the greatest. So thank you, Tyler. Thanks, everybody, listening. Thanks, everybody, for watching. We got more stuff coming for you very soon. More mock drafts, etc. All on YouTube. All on the podcasts. So stay tuned, and we will see you next time.